Hi, I wanted to make this video because I've been thinking, and this time I've been thinking about facing my fears. So the reason I've been thinking about facing my fears is because I'm confused about whether it's better to know and understand your limits or to face your fears and push yourself beyond what feels comfortable. So if you've watched some of my other videos, you may already know that I'm starting to realise that some of my anxieties may be connected to autism. But does having that knowledge change anything about how I should go about my life? I've been trying to pay more attention to what different situations do to me, so that I can figure out which ones cause me the most stress. But when I've figured that out, should I stop doing them? Which choice might be better for me in the long run? So this question seems like another interesting subject and one that I'd like to dig into a bit more. It does feel particularly relevant to me at the moment because I've been invited to a social event that I know is going to cause me anxiety. I'm not sure whether I should go or not. I don't want to say yes and then dread it and have my anxiety start to build. But I also don't want to allow my fears to control me and to make me say no and then miss out on seeing people that I haven't seen for a long time and potentially having a nice time. I feel like I already know that I'll say yes because that's what I always do. But is it really the right decision for me? I wonder what other people in my situation would do. I'll need to travel on public transport. I'll need to talk to people that I don't know. So I know that I'll be calmer if I stay at home, but I don't want to stay at home for the rest of my life. So if you've seen my video about social anxiety, you'll know that I'm not the sort of person who relishes being invited to a big social event, but I'm also not the sort of person who likes to say no to things. So if this is about facing my fears, what exactly are my fears? Can I even name what scares me about being invited to a social event? I've heard that naming your fears can sometimes reduce the power that they have over you. So I'm going to give that a try. So I'm afraid that I won't feel comfortable in what I'm wearing. I'm afraid that I won't want to eat the food that's provided. I'm afraid that I'll have to sit next to someone I don't know and make conversation with them. I'm afraid that I'll get the greetings wrong. Should it be a kiss, a hug, a handshake, a wave? If it's a kiss, how many, which side? There's just so much potential for embarrassment. I'm afraid I won't know what to talk about, or I'll run out of things to say and the atmosphere will get awkward. I'm afraid I'll have to eat in front of people that I don't know. I'm afraid that I'll look really uncomfortable and that people will ask me what's wrong. And I'm afraid that I'll want to leave but won't be able to. So those are my fears. Are they enough to mean that I shouldn't go? Or is it better to fight on despite them? Like most of the questions that spin around in my mind, it doesn't feel that easy to answer. I wish I could say that, some of those fears have become easier after years of experience. Maybe they have a little, but I do still get anxious even after having survived plenty of social events in my life. So that tells me that I'm unlikely to ever be cured of this, just by making myself do it. But has pushing myself to keep going done me any damage? I think for me, the answer to that is probably no, apart from maybe too much alcohol at times. But it hasn't done me any damage, but it also hasn't cured me. So, if I can't take the fear away, can I make it any easier to face so that I can keep saying yes to these situations without dread? So maybe if I was more honest about my feelings, it might make some of the fear go away. I'm definitely trying to be honest in these videos, and it's making me look, a bit deeper inside myself so that I know what being honest actually means for me. I do think that part of my fear is that I haven't felt able to explain to other people what the problem is. So if they ask, "Are you okay?" I don't even know how to answer that honestly. So I think that just adds to my fear. And I'm afraid to look awkward in case someone asks me why I look awkward. Perhaps the answer, isn't needing to tell everyone that you're afraid, but knowing yourself enough to realise why you might be having a certain reaction, and then being able to explain that to someone else if you need to. I've always struggled with the thought that if someone asked me how they could help me, I wouldn't know how to answer. But perhaps if I did have an answer ready, for that question, it would give me more confidence to be in the situation. So since I've been on this learning journey, I've been trying to pay more attention to how I feel in certain situations. And I've noticed that I often take around 10 minutes to start to calm down, when I find myself in a new situation. My initial reaction is generally to panic and to think that I need to escape. But maybe if I can trust that knowledge that I just need 10 minutes, perhaps I could use that to help me. Maybe that's what I could say to other people if I start to struggle. I could let them know that I just need 10 minutes quietly on my own, and then I might be okay. I could even use the word social anxiety if I felt able to. I still think I'd feel a bit silly saying that I needed to take 10 minutes, but at least that's a clear and specific thing to say that would be easy for someone else to understand. And it would allow me a bit of space to find out if I do actually calm down. But most importantly, it's a plan, and I get a lot of comfort out of having a plan. And it's funny to think that, I've had these feelings for so many years, but I don't think I would have made the realizations, about what was happening and what might help if I hadn't been making these videos and putting more effort into getting to know myself better. Maybe for other people, when they dig a bit deeper into getting to know themselves, their reactions might be more extreme than mine. So, maybe the suggestion of needing 10 minutes to calm down might not be enough. This is a personal thing, and, getting to know yourself is going to look different for each person. But for me, it's really interesting and worthwhile to pay more attention to my reactions and then to be able to really think about what might help. And then hopefully I can carry on facing my fears that might have got in the way of me having the sort of life that I want to have. I do already feel more empowered by having thought it through and, devised a plan based on what I've noticed about myself. And it does feel a safer way of facing my fears than just going along and hoping for the best, which is what I usually do. I'll be honest that it does frustrate me that I have to go to this extent of overthinking, just to try and be calm in a social situation. But, I think I need to start accepting that it's the way I'm made, and I need to work with it rather than pretend it isn't happening, or hoping that it will go away. I was thinking if I need some extra motivation to sort of keep pushing myself to face those fears, you've got some other good reasons that I can keep reminding myself of. So I think that's also useful exercise. For me now, I'm thinking about social events, but you could really relate this to any fears that you want to face. And that's to think about what you're hoping to achieve by facing them. So for me, social events are an opportunity to make connections with other people, who might enhance my life or I might enhance theirs. I think making connections with other people is worth taking a risk for. And social events generally have the main purpose of being fun. And I love having fun, and I definitely don't want to miss out on opportunities to have fun. So, I think that having fun is also worth taking a risk for. And generally, when I do anything to face my fears instead of hiding from them, I feel proud afterwards, and that's a great way to feel. So I think feeling proud is also worth taking a risk for. So those are some pretty good reasons to motivate myself, that saying yes to facing my fears and going to social events is the right thing for me to do. And now I have a plan for how I can excuse myself if I start to feel a bit overwhelmed. It might sound simple, and I guess it is simple, but maybe the best things always are. Hopefully just knowing that I have a plan will help me to be calmer and less likely to even need it. I know I've thought it through well enough, so now I just need to test it out. So getting back to the original question, is it better to face your fears or to know and stick to your limits? And specifically for me, should I say yes to the social event that I've been invited to? So I'll take the easy one first. Yes, I think I should accept the invitation to the social event, and I'll put my new plan into action. And I'm looking forward to seeing whether having a plan for how to act if those feelings start to bubble up, see if it will really make a difference. And then for the broader question, should we face our fears or know and stick to our limits? I think you have to get to know yourself first so that you can understand the risks that you might be taking. But my instinct tells me that we shouldn't give up too easily. As long as you've checked that you're not likely to hurt yourself, then I think be brave, make a plan, and take a risk, because you'll probably enhance your life if you do. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time. Bye.